Hey nerds, what's up? You may have heard recently about the Audible situation, which many different booktubers are covering, and I've been asked both in emails and in comments by a few people if I was going to address it. To be perfectly frank, I was not planning on addressing it unless I had something new to add to the conversation, because I am somebody who is never going to just make a video to repeat what everybody else is saying. And just until recently, I didn't really have anything to add into the conversation until now. If this is the first time you're hearing of this, you can go and watch the several videos that have covered it, spearheaded by Daniel Green and his chats with Robin Sullivan, wife to author Michael J. Sullivan. These videos explain it in depth, and I feel like I don't have a lot to add to those explanations. If this is the first you're hearing of this, the quickest TLDR is that Audible is rolling out a new royalties program that at first glance seems better, with higher royalties rates for authors. But when you really get down to the nitty-gritty of it, the way those royalties are dispersed actually means less money is going to authors. It's very convoluted as a system, so I think many authors are just learning what it actually means for them and their royalties. For example, one of my husband's author friends recently said that after the change, his royalties have dropped by 53%. Authors would obviously be invested in combating this. The first thing I want to add here is that this is no surprise to me because it models very clearly what Amazon has already done with their Kindle Unlimited program. Kindle Unlimited is their service where you can read unlimited ebooks that are a part of the KU program for a flat fee per month. Authors are paid by page read on Kindle Unlimited if they are part of the program. Now, let's look at the average per page payout of Kindle Unlimited since 2016 based on data from Written Words Media. We can see a very clear downward trend from 2016 to 2024. Does anyone want to see what Amazon's earnings look like during that same time period? Shocker. You might be asking, well then, why are authors agreeing to be a part of Kindle Unlimited? And the quick answer is a lot of these are indie authors who find that Kindle Unlimited is one of the best, if only, ways for people to give their books chances. By not having to buy a book and buy an untested author, but rather be able just to read as much or as little as you want in the Kindle Unlimited program, indie authors find it a very easy way to convince people to try their new books. And then they can hope that they convert those readers to fans who will go out and buy their books in different formats and might contribute to their bottom line there. As another point to this, running Audible in the same way they're running Kindle Unlimited should not be a surprise to anybody because it's a corporation and corporations care about one thing: money. We need to keep both these points in mind as we continue because we will be circling back to them. What we really need to talk about next is the consumer. What does the consumer think about this? Now, if you're here and upset about this change, you may think, well, hey, I'm the consumer. But if you're here watching this and a part of BookTube's community, I'm going to go ahead and say, in general, you're not the average consumer. People in the online book community, especially on platforms like YouTube, which are more long-form content and community-based, tend to be very, very invested in the fantasy community and thus very invested in the authors and the health of the community as a whole. We care when we feel like the authors of our favorite works aren't getting paid fairly, and we also often know the formats in which authors get paid the most and seek those out, because we care about them and our community. I'm not going to sit here and say that the average consumer doesn't care about any of that. What I'm going to say is worse. I don't think the average consumer even knows that they should care about it. I don't think they've thought about it at all. They probably listen to their audiobooks without a single thought given to how the author is getting paid, just the same as many of us watch Netflix without thinking about how all the actors are getting paid from us streaming that, or how we listen to Spotify and never wonder how our favorite artists are earning from our streams. I don't mean this in a rude way, but just that the average consumer doesn't know it's something that they should be concerned about. So why does the average consumer matter? Well, because we are wanting Audible to change, and the only way we are going to get a corporation to change is if we hurt them where it really hurts, their wallet. And we need to discuss what scale we're really talking about here. Daniel Green's highest viewed video about this topic has 200,000 views at the time of this recording. Now, that seems nothing to scoff at. That seems like a huge number. It is stadiums full of people who have viewed it. As of May 2023, Audible had 27.3 million monthly users. And in the 2 years since then, it's probably only grown. 27 million users. If every single one of Daniel Green's views were unique, they aren't. If every single one of those people owned an Audible, they don't. And if every single one of them decided to quit Audible because of this change, they wouldn't. Even in this impossible scenario that I've just outlined, even if all 200,000 people did those things, it would be less than 1% of Audible's monthly user base, 0.7%. And if we look at the more realistic number, which is the people who have currently signed the petition, so they did some sort of action, which even then is probably high, it would be less than 0.1%. That just isn't enough people to hurt their bottom line. It's not going to cost them a dime. The corporations don't care about bad press. Tons of corporations have bad press, and as long as it doesn't affect their bottom line, they don't care. If we want to make a difference here, we need the consumers to care in the millions. We literally need millions of consumers to care and change their behavior to show Amazon that what they are doing isn't viable in business terms. Besides just the hurdle of getting the average consumer to care, which we're going to talk about in a minute, it's also extremely hard to get consumers to inconvenience themselves. As of 2022, Audible held a 63.4% share in the audiobook market, which I'm sure has only grown since then. So if we round up, 65% share. And that's not even including Amazon's share of the overall book market, which I think as of 2023 was 50%. With the way that Amazon works for physical ebook and audiobooks and how they go together, like you get deals on audiobooks if you buy an ebook through Amazon, that convenience factor alone for consumers is already going to be a huge tough sell to get them to change and leave Audible in protest. The average consumer is served by Amazon well. So how do we get them to care about something that doesn't affect them in the short term? Of course, we can talk about long term and how companies that have a monopoly are never going to eventually serve the consumer because there's nobody to compete with them. And we can talk about the strain it puts on our artists and authors who won't be able to make viable livings and thus stop creating works. But those long-term things are often very hard to convince people of when they can only see short-term benefits. So who can actually make a difference? How can we actually affect change? I think it would literally have to be the biggest authors of today, and not only the biggest authors, but ones who have die-hard fan bases. The biggest authors, when you look at Goodreads, who have the most reviews of the day, I'm talking Sarah J. Maas, I'm talking Colleen Hoover, I'm talking the biggest hitters removing their books from Audible in protest and their fans following them because they believe in them. I don't know if they have fan bases like that. That's just all conjecture. Because these giant authors more likely have fan bases that can do that, as I said, and also more likely have the means to not be completely worried about their entire livelihood if they go up to bat. This is going to be a lot harder than it sounds. The immediate thing I thought of was Taylor Swift versus Spotify back in was it 2014? She went to bat. Not only was she a hugely popular artist at the time, but the bigger deal is that Taylor Swift has cultivated a fan base who is diehard and will follow her wherever she goes. We saw that with Taylor's versions recently. So when she said this isn't right, her audience said, okay, we'll follow you, we believe you. Which authors have that same fan base? Now, before you start going harassing authors about this, please don't, by the way, let's talk about some other considerations here. Like the fact that their publishers might just be like, nah, we're not taking your books off Audible. You realize how much it's asking, right? To take on somebody like Amazon? I was watching a Brandon Sanderson stream a while ago. I apologize, I do not know exactly which stream it was, but it was around the time of his year of Sanderson and Kickstarter, so a few years ago. And I remember him talking about one time his books were removed because of the publisher off of Amazon for a few days, and he realized how much of his revenue was tied up in Amazon. It was some giant number, like 80% or something. And how he started thinking, shoot, I've got to diversify because if something happens to my books on Amazon, it will totally gut me. Sanderson is kind of known for being someone more thoughtful about stuff like that and trying to make a business model. A lot of authors might just not have a diverse enough income stream to take on Amazon, or their publishers would be unwilling to because all of their authors are on Amazon. Because if you try to take on Audible, which is owned by Amazon, what if Amazon says, oh, you're taking your books off Audible? I guess we don't need to sell your books on Amazon anymore. And my guess is that would be a considerable drop in income for even the largest of authors. We know that traditionally published authors don't always have control over their books. And so if a publisher doesn't want to piss off Amazon, even if the author really believes in it, their hands might also be tied for reasons beyond just like their entire livelihood, just understanding what you're really asking of them. Speaking of Sanderson, while he might not be one of those biggest authors of the day, I mean, no denying he's huge, but he's huge in the fantasy space, which tends to be a little bit less than some of the larger spaces, including like romantasy, which has come up, and regular fiction. Sanderson does have sway with his fandom at the scale I've been talking about. So not only is he a bigger author, but he also has sway. In his most recent weekly update at the time of filming this, he mentioned that he will have a statement about the Audible situation. So he, for me, is someone I am watching because I think if there's someone in this space that could potentially affect real change with Audible, it is someone like him who has a big enough fan base and also a fan base that is willing to follow his lead, which I do believe he has. So personally for me, I'm going to be keeping an eye on him in this situation. Other ideas, we probably need to get Book Talk invested. Quite clearly, BookTube is much smaller when we talk about influencing the book community. I never see books recommended by BookTube in a bookstore, but I sure see a lot of books recommended by Book Talk. The Book Talkers getting deals. They're mostly the influencers of our community right now. We need the romantasy girlies. Where are you? You're influencing things. We need the heavy hitters. We need the heavy hitters that have millions of followers. Just as reality. I feel like I needed to add something here to fully bring all my points together here at the end. Essentially, if you take on Audible, you are taking on Amazon. On the one hand, we have to recognize that the self-publishing industry exists how it does right now because of Amazon. Programs like KU and Print on Demand have made it possible for indie authors to reach audiences point blank. Additionally, many of our biggest named authors that we love make a vast majority of their income through Amazon purchases. On the other hand, underpaying authors has been an issue here for a while, and the new Audible restructuring is bad for authors and clearly cuts into profits on margins that already seemed bad to begin with. If we want to fight the Audible change, we have to understand how to fight it, which is that we have to reach through to the average consumer and make it unprofitable for Audible to make these new changes. So, I'm not trying to be depressing. I feel like this video is depressing and I'm acting like we can never affect change for good. As always, we can only control ourselves, and as consumers, we can vote with our wallet and we can say we don't agree with this Audible and we can leave. But I also just wanted to recognize that the scale in which we have to show our displeasure to Amazon has to be at a scale that will affect the bottom line. And that is going to be a lot of people. So if you want to spread the word about this, we've got to spread the word to people who can make a difference. Yes, that might be Book Talk influencers. I also think it's really just going to have to be publishers and authors. And if they believe in that strongly enough, perhaps we can see change. But yeah, this is a downer video because sometimes I have to be a realist about what we're really going up against. And rather than saying, I guess we can't do anything, let's just keep it how it is, it's more like, how can we positively try to get the word out there on a scale that matters? I don't know the answer to that. What I could do, maybe others can inspire people, some other big hitters in the community can inspire people, and we can try to stick up and advocate for the authors that mean a lot to us. Yep. Bye.